All set.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Norwell Public Library Board of Directors meeting June 8th, 7 p.m. via Zoom. Do a roll call. We have Janie Williams, Mary Mann, Ralph Bloom, Laurel Peterson, Alex Knopp, and Tom Cullen in attendance. So if it's okay, we have, oh, do we have anyone for public comments? No. So we have the meeting minutes of May 11th and June 21st. June 21st? No, this is not June 21st. This is June
1st.
June 1st. The meeting minutes, would anyone like to move these minutes? May 11th minutes?
Oh,
Yeah, any changes? Edits? All in favor?
aye.
And we have the June 1st minutes.
On the May minutes. First of all, we didn't put absent Patsy and Tom on the minutes. And then on the facilities committee, I remember stating that I was supposed to be on the committee and that's not in there. So I was
Oh,
supposed to be
okay,
on the
that's a good
committee,
point.
and that should be in there under the facilities.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Janie. So all in favor with Janie's edit? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then the June 1st minutes.
Yep.
I move to accept the June 1st minutes. Any changes, edits? Yep. No, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
And Tom Cullen abstains.
I'm gonna
Right.
abstain, that's why I was not present.
Yeah, I abstained too because I wasn't present.
Right, so, okay, that is Laurel and
Alex and Tom.
Alex, you were there
No, I wasn't.
for the June 11th, for the one about the GNLV,
I was, oh, yes, I'm sorry. I
the
thought you
special
meant,
meeting
oh,
that
yeah,
we
I
have.
thought you meant about the furniture. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, the special
Yes,
meeting.
yeah, I apologize. Yes, I was there.
Okay, so we are gonna just switch things around just a bit. We have Amanda Cleveland here to talk about the Sono Library timeline and what we should expect to have happen over the next few months. So
Hey, want me to just run with it, Sherelle?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So everybody, Amanda Cleveland, who's spearheading the Sono repurposing project, she's been on with us before, and as Moina said, she will provide a timeline as much as she can, because the contract has not yet been signed, but she'll give us what she can tonight.
Correct. So right now where we are is Titan Enterprises is working on getting the contract signed with the city. In the meantime, in the background, what they're trying to do is get as much legwork done as possible so that when we do get the approval to proceed, we can just hit the ground running. And so what that means is they are looking at long lead time items, getting those project submittals pulled together so that when we have a go, they can send it right to me and I can approve it right away and get it out the door so that it can be ordered. Right now, it looks like 10 to 12 weeks for lighting is our longest lead time. And then they think once everything gets started, it'll be about 2 to 3 months to finish the project. So from start to finish, approximately 2 to 3 months. So basically we're waiting for that contract to go to get the construction piece going. And in the meantime, my coworker and I, Brianna, are working on solidifying the FF&E package. And that is my update.
Does anybody have any questions for Amanda? I guess I have a question. So is there, like, why is I mean, the contract has been ready for a while, right? Is there any issue with the city moving forward with it, or?
I don't think there's an issue. Sometimes there's back and forth if there's like little things that are on. I emailed Taisha. She wanted to get the name of the contact person. I guess the person who normally deals with them on the city side is on vacation, but nobody indicated that there's a problem.
Okay. And so. Okay, thanks for the update. I think once, it would be helpful if once the contract is signed, if we could get something in writing. Just so that, I know we have these updates, but if we could get a kind of a project timeline in
Yes.
writing, we could kind of keep track and, you know, kind of, and see how the progress is moving. I mean, it's obviously, you know, timelines are always,
Oh, sure. They're always just a snapshot in time.
sometimes moving parts, but I think it would be helpful to us, especially over the summer months, to see, you know, what's going on. So.
Yeah, it's very common. So as soon as we have that date that we can start, they'll do a schedule that essentially gives you the milestones of what they'll be hitting during the project construction. And they said that they would also give us a submittal log so that we know what's coming our way. So once we get going, we'll actually have a lot of information to be able to share with the team.
Okay, great. Thanks, Amanda.
All right, thank you.
Amanda.
All right, have a good night all.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So I think Dawn should be arriving any second, and I think maybe there she is.
Do you want me to see if I can change the name?
Yes, please. And can you also make her co-host? Because I think she's going to be sharing a presentation.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so wait a minute. So Dawn, it's LA capital VALLE, correct? Yes? All right.
And yeah, make
Let me make you co-host.
I'm sorry, it was an actual in-person meeting, so now I'm totally confused.
So I would like to introduce Dawn Laval. She's the Director of Library Development at the Connecticut State Library. I've had the pleasure of talking with Dawn a couple of times. She is a wealth of information, and there is like absolutely no issue that I've talked to her that she hasn't probably had in her various kind of forays around the state. And so I think we're going to find this really interesting. I know I've told Dawn that we sometimes have a lot of questions about, you know, our role as a board, you know, where does our kind of authority lie? What are some of the best practices that the state board recommends? What are some issues that come up? So I'm going to turn it over to Dawn.
Great. Thank you so much, Moina, for having me. And hi, everybody. Hi, Sherelle. It's awesome to see you. So I'm a little bit of quick background, then I'll get into the nitty gritty of why we're here. So I am the Director Division of Library Development for Connecticut State Library. I oversee all statewide services for all academic, school, public, and special libraries. And that's everything from construction grants to consulting to our statewide resources to professional development. But I'm also, my specialty in consulting lies in the administration and governance of public libraries, also working with boards and friends groups, and also strategy planning. I have over 25 years of strategic planning from the military to corporate to libraries. So I really appreciate the wonderful words. I've learned all of this from doing a lot of reading and research and answering questions over and over and over again. So feel free to chime in if you have any questions as we go along, and I'll just get you started here. So go past that. So first, thank you, because you guys are volunteers, and library boards do not function without the wonderful volunteers that take the times out of their evenings and their family life to really help shepherd your library through just serving your community. We're going to do a little bit touching on board governance, advocacy, effective board practices and resources. So first and foremost, the board of directors, board of trustees, however you refer to yourself, is legally and morally accountable for the health and effectiveness of the library. The board ensures that the organization achieves its mission in an ethical, transparent, accountable, and prudent manner. And as a trustee or board member, you should understand the purpose and mission of your institution, which is defined by its charter, certificate of incorporation, bylaws, or legislation. And so there's all different types of board structure governance in the state of Connecticut. There's municipal libraries, association libraries, there's governing boards, advisory boards, they're appointed, they're elected, and a whole mishmash of everything. But you, in your establishment in the state statutes, you're an advisory board for a municipal library. And you are appointed. So I'm not going to read through all of this. I'll always share this with you so that you have it. But you are, as a department of basically a municipal library, you have input on policies and planning and should participate or be responsible for the hiring of a new library director, your evaluation of your current director. But most importantly, aside from all the governance, the policy making, the supervision and so forth, the board is responsible for representing the library to the community and ensuring the quality of library service and advocating for adequate funding. So there is an established Norwalk Public Library Board, and according to this is directly from your charter, shall make the rules and regulations for governing government of Norwalk Public Library, branch libraries, and reading rooms, and shall have the care and supervision of the grounds, rooms, building. You can read through that. You know that it's in your charter. It should be in your bylaws. Most importantly, you work with the director to identify and establish policies, give advice on, buildings, work with the director on evaluations, and really ensure that the library is doing everything to meet the needs of its community.
Hey, Dawn,
Yes,
do we ask questions as you, or do you want to go through?
absolutely. Go ahead.
All right, so this seems to say a little bit more than you're saying. This says that the board makes rules and regulations for the government of the library and has care and supervision of the grounds, rooms, and buildings. How is that advisory?
That is advisory, because a governing board has direct purview over budgetary decisions. So governing boards and advisory boards are very similar in establishment of policies, which is the governing, the supervision and overview of grounds, unless your municipality provides grounds upkeep from the municipality. But the difference between an advisory board and a governing board in the state of Connecticut is that the governing board has sole purview over making budgetary decisions. And in the case of an advisory board, it is the library director that develops a budget that the advisory board can approve, or not necessarily approve, but provide input on to present to the city of Norwalk. So there is a very distinction between the governing board, more so specifically as it relates to budget decisions. Like exactly go further into that, the approval of bills, the payment of bills, the accounting of bills, and so forth.
Well, I don't know, this reads differently than what you've said. I understand that.
Nowhere in here does it say that you have sole authority over the budget. That's the distinction between a governing board and an advisory board.
And that's what I was just going to say. That
Right,
means
so
that
let me,
we are
so just
an
to finish,
advisory board then.
Just to finish, Janie. So, we're talking about the authority under this part of the city ordinances. And we're talking about the word advisory, which has a dictionary meaning, and it has
Mhm.
meaning that derived from these words. So for example, this says that the board shall annually prepare a budget advisory in nature for submission to the Board of Estimate.
Mhm.
Right. So that's
So
the-
you're established as an advisory board
right,
when the Norwalk Library was established under state statute and the filing with the Secretary of State with the state of Connecticut. Your board was established in that filing as an advisory board. And the
Right.
key word that you just said in the budget is advisory in nature. And
Correct.
the distinction with a governing board is that the governing board essentially approves the payment of bills, basically acts as the comptroller of the library.
right. So that I understand and it's in the plain language. But earlier on, it says that the library board makes rules or regulations for the government of the library and has care and supervision of the grounds.
Yep, and that's advisory, but every advisory board, every governing board in the state, the rules and regulations are essentially your policies. This is old language. But every board in Connecticut, regardless of whether you're an advisory board or a governing board, works with the director to develop policies for the library.
Right.
Mhm.
And so, the thing is, it says that the preparation of the budget is advisory, which we understand and have never disputed. But it says that the board makes the regulations for the government of the library grounds and policies.
And that's correct. The
Right.
terminology we use is policies.
Right,
But
so
boards make
maybe-
policies and enforce the policies.
Right, so that may be regarded in some lexicon as advisory, but in day-to-day carrying out of these authorities, it is more than advisory. It's responsible for the government of these things.
And so that language in there is really problematic, that I would say straight off, that any board, whether you're a governing board or an advisory board, the rules and regulations are essentially the policies. So boards only make, with the director, develop, implement, and support policies.
Right,
And that's the rules and regulations for the government. Take that phrase and just replace it in your head with the word policy.
right, but they're not advisory policies, they're the actual policies.
Exactly, and that's what I made before, is that advisory boards and governing boards in the state of Connecticut are responsible for working with directors to develop the policies for the libraries. The distinction with the governing boards is the distinction in the budgetary area. So many, for example, the state library board is an advisory board. Now, they do not make decisions about how we spend our budget, bills paid, but the state library board, as an advisory board, does work with the state librarian to develop policies that they enforce. And that's the same, just this, it's an advisory board or a governing board, always, regardless, are responsible for the policies. The distinctions between the advisory board and the governing board are going more so to the fiscal management of the libraries.
Right,
Can we just pause right here for a second? Sherelle, are you there?
I'm here.
I think Geraldo is trying to get on.
He should be able to just get right in. Hold on, let's see, hold on.
I think we're kind of going back and forth on the same issue. Can we just?
Yeah, so
can we move to
let's,
this
why don't we
next
move
slide?
on and then we'll go from there. But really,
Yeah, well, go ahead.
the true distinction between the advisory board and the governing board is the fiscal management. So let's go on. We can revisit it later.
And Moina,
Um,
I'm sorry, just 1 second.
Okay,
Most people, they can just get in. He doesn't have to wait to be let in, but I don't see his name here.
I just re-forwarded him the link. He said he's trying to get on, so I
Oh.
just.
Yeah, I don't see him, but this one, you don't have to wait to be let in. You can just,
Okay, I forwarded him the link, so let's see if
Okay.
he just,
I'll wait. I'll see if there's an email too, and I'll keep looking out.
okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Sorry, Don.
so Alex, here's where you see the distinction for governance through our due diligence. So in Connecticut, the library boards, either governing or advisory, governing boards have the final legal and fiscal authority for the library. In general, if the library is founded by authority of the Connecticut statutes and operated as a private association, trustees are a member of a governing board. In this case, you're not an association library, you're a municipal library, you're an advisory board. And so it says, in this case, the board provides input on policies and planning and often participates, again, as mentioned before, in the hiring and evaluation of a library director. And it just goes back to the main purpose of the board is to represent the library in the community, ensuring quality library service and advocating for adequate funding.
I
So
know we
really,
I know we want to move on, but we don't provide input on policies. We approve,
you should.
yes. Well, we do input, but we approve them.
Yeah, but you should provide
Right.
input.
Yes, of
So,
course.
so here's the process for developing policies. What the library director identifies the need for a policy, and the library director will draft a policy. And then the library director will present that policy to the library board for input, advice, suggestions. And then the library board, upon agreeing as a board that this policy is a good policy and that the library should adopt it, votes on it, and then implements it, enforces it, and supports it.
Right. That to me is doing more than providing input.
Well, it's just a general term, but providing input is providing advice, providing suggestions. Yeah, that's incredibly important.
And we adopt them.
Yep, absolutely. And the most important part of that is when you adopt a policy that represents, we look at policies as the immune system for the library. For example, libraries are experiencing issues with book banning, challenges and things of that nature. So a good collection development policy or a challenge policy provides that immune system. So it is important. The input is just more than just saying, oh, this is good. The input is like, maybe we should say this, maybe we should make it stronger like that. Your role is to assist and provide advice to the library director to really establish policies that are really good, durable policies. All right. So the other important part of your job is complying with relevant laws and regulations for trustees. And so you are essentially a public officer in a sense, not literal sense, but the fiduciary responsibility to community citizens and taxpayers. The public library is a municipal asset. And you're essentially holding the library in trust for the public. It distinguishes here, trustees of governing boards have a legal responsibility to ensure adherence to legal and ethical standards. That's essentially same for advisory boards as well. Trustees need to be aware of the relevant legal requirements, strive to act within laws, and seek expert advice when appropriate. So I'm extracting a lot of information from the handbook, the Association of Connecticut Library Boards handbook. So you can use that as further reference, but I just want to touch base on that. I'm not going to get into detail and talk about what's fiduciary responsibility, but just think of it this way. You're representing a public entity that's funded with tax dollars, and you should always conduct yourself and act in the best interests of the organization that you're representing.
I just want
So-
to let you know that Geraldo did make it on.
Great, thanks.
So going back to policies, one of the most important responsibilities of a library trustee, whether you're an advisory or a governing trustee, is the development of policies by which the library director, staff, and trustees can make consistent service and administrative decisions. So policies are really, again, they're your immune system to a lot of different issues: patron code of conduct, internet usage, unattended children policies, collection development policies, and those things. We have a lot of resources and information on policies. And again, on our resource guide, which Sherelle is very aware of and uses, but also in the handbook. I'm not going to go into detail this. Another important part of your job is to work with the library director, the staff, the community, and strategic planning for your library. If you've been in business, you've done business planning. If you've been in nonprofit organizations, you've done strategic planning. Planning is a really critical part of the board in working with the library director to ensure that your library has essentially a roadmap for considering expansion of library facilities, what kind of services you're providing, what kind of resources you acquire, but really having a plan for the library moving forward. And the other important part of your job, whether you're advisory or governing, is the hiring and evaluation of a qualified library director. It is the single most important decision of any library board. And regardless of whether you're a municipal library, an association library, an advisory board, a governing board, that is one of the key roles of any board. And you, as the Norwalk Public Library Board, as an advisory board, that's a key role of your board, is you already got a director. If it ever comes up again, that's a role that you do with your current director. Another important role that you need to do is to work with your director, to evaluate the director, and to ensure that the director has everything she needs to operate the library. And ensuring adequate support. As a municipal library, you cannot fundraise. However, you can advocate for your library budget. During the budget season, you can advocate to the community. It is incredibly important for you to be aware of the fiscal health of the library.
Well, I have
The
a
library.
question.
Yeah,
I
sure.
do
Go
have
ahead.
a question, because right now the situation is we have a library director, and our library director is hired by the city.
Mhm.
And that kind of gets into a hairy thing, because they say that the board, a public library, hires the director, but
Did
isn't
your
that getting
board
into,
interview and recommend the director to the city?
we do is recommend. They give us the,
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
recommend.
that's
the
standard.
city.
So I was
Okay.
at the Fairfield Library, which is a municipal library, and your board is the direct supervisor of the library director. In the case of a municipal library, the library board will interview, evaluate, and make recommendations to the municipal, whether it's a selectman, the mayor, or whomever, to hire. That's pretty standard practice. But you were the board tasked with the interview process and the recommendation.
Right. Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
And I know there's a lot of small letters in there, but this is really, again, just community needs. This is all basically, the library is a hub of civic engagement. The library is a welcoming space for the community. The role of the library is a user-centered. This particular slide is just what you should be aware of, how you're working with your library director to ensure that the library community is getting the services, that it has the resources, that it has the welcoming space for them to come into. This is really essentially, yes.
Yeah, I need to go back. You mentioned that the library board has supervision over the director.
Mhm.
We have another layer in between the city.
Yeah,
Then our director has another supervisor. And I mean, it kind
I
of
know.
gets, oh, you do understand? You
Yeah.
understand what I'm
And,
saying?
and again, it's something that's pretty common with municipal libraries. So, so
Okay.
here's the thing. And you are, again, the ones who interview, make the recommendation. You are, according to our statute, you are the direct supervisor of the library director. So think of it as a business where you are the board of directors and the library director is your CEO. That's the governance structure. However, with we know with a municipal department, which the library is, that there is oftentimes, either that layer that you have, or sometimes, for example, I'm going to use the example of Fairfield, where the first
Okay.
select person is kind of like has that kind of supervision over the director, but you have direct supervision. And I know it's a little bit confusing, but the structure in the statute is that the board of directors has direct supervision over the library director. Whomever that middle layer is not in the library every day. They're not attending your meetings. They're not
No, they are
developing
not.
policy.
And we recently the city had an efficiency study that was done, and it indicated that the situation that we're dealing with right now is not good,
No.
And it really needs to be reviewed and looked at. I guess one of the questions I have, in order to really change it, does it have to be a charter revision change?
Yeah, I think you want to the establishment of the board and the board's responsibilities in any community is in your charter. So
Okay.
it's always good for the charter to be very clear about that. And I'm assuming the efficiency study said, why do you have, it's kind of like a redundancy. So,
Absolutely.
so when you have and again, I'll go back to the state library. The state library board has direct supervision over the state librarian. The state librarian does not report to the governor.
Okay.
So it really creates it's kind of like a conflict. It just creates
It really
this unnecessary layer. So I think, honestly, to be in the spirit of the statute and to be in the spirit of why libraries have boards and the purpose of the board, which is to have which is to have supervision over the library director, having that middle layer needs to be addressed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other
Thank you
thing
very
is-
much. I hope everybody heard that. Okay.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention too is that middle layer, if that person is, because in our case, that's the community, I forgot what the exact name of it, but that's the person that Sherelle reports to. So if that's the person she reports to, that person actually, in my purview, should be attending the meetings of the board meetings, because that person is over.
Yeah.
Actually over. So
No, I see what you're saying, and that would be important.
Mhm.
But I also think it's important to really go back to the purpose of the statute, the state statute, in establishing a public library board and what the purpose of the board is. And the purpose of the board is, in the advisor capacity and in the governing capacity. But one of the main purposes of the board is to be the supervisor of the library director.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I think
Dawn,
Alex has a-
yeah, I agree with you about the supervision issue, because I think that's related to the concern of the state statute to have libraries be independent of more political authorities, as it were. But,
Absolutely.
but may I urge you to be a little more cautious in your language about Norwalk? Our statute is an ordinance, not in the charter, and will be changed by ordinance.
Mhm.
So when you say it should be in the charter, I don't know whether there are other towns that have just charter provisions and no ordinances.
No, there's towns that have charter revisions and ordinances.
Right, so ours
But
is, in-
the ordinances and the charters should be in line with the state statute and the establishment of, particularly because so
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 in
the
our
establishment of,
city- in our city,
Go ahead.
the library is not mentioned in the charter, but it is established, the board is established by ordinance.
yep. But that also, and there's other libraries in Connecticut that are established in the ordinance, but they are in line with the state statute.
Yes,
Because
I
for
agree with
it-
that. I
yeah.
agree with that. All I'm saying is
Yeah.
for you to say it has to be in the charter. is
Sure,
not
absolutely.
about no-
Wherever, you know what, Alex, wherever it needs to be corrected, that's where it should be. So I just urge that there's alignment with the state statute, which
Absolutely.
establishes the public libraries, the principal public libraries that enable the libraries to get funding from us, to get reimbursements.
Absolutely.
So I think it's absolutely imperative that the ordinance be in alignment with the statute.
Absolutely. I still want somebody to hear this and think it had to be in the charter and not in an ordinance.
If it is, I'm sorry, Moina?
Oh, I just wanted to say, in my research of this topic, I actually came across New Haven's. I talked to Maureen Sullivan over at New Haven. She's a director there. And she was saying that, I guess they're searching for a executive director over there. She may be interim. I'm not exactly sure, but she sent me the job description for the New Haven Public Library, and they also have this second layer of government. And in their job description, it says that the library director has dual reporting structure to the board on these topics, and to their kind of, they call the head of administrative services on HR personnel, something around facilities.
Yeah, it's
whatever. I don't know.
complicated.
Is that like
It's-
something that people are doing, or is
No,
that
New
that's, like,
Haven is
kinda not-
New Haven is an island in terms of, and their governance structure actually creates a lot of problems. And I'll give an example. So when we give them, when we give out grants, for example, we distributed ARPA grants. Because of their structure, the funding had to go through this foundation, and it created delays and problems, and they lost money. Because the structure is problematic. It's almost like, honestly, it's like 3 layers. Because they're doing multiple, their structure is unique to them in the state of Connecticut. So other municipal and I'll go back and use the example of Fairfield, because Fairfield's a good example of how your model should be. As a municipal library, there's, it's very clear. It's very, the board is an advisory board that has the same, supervision of the director, working with the director on policies, but it's very clear. It's very clear cut. New Haven has, it's very complicated, and it's problematic. And I think that if the efficiency study is saying, this doesn't make sense, I think it's your opportunity to be very clear. To be very clear, and to, we are the advisory board. We have oversight of the director. We work with the director on policies to ensure that the library is governed, and we work with the director to provide input and advice on the budget. But that should be it. And then the next layer should really be the mayor. I
And
think
hear
that,
you. I kind of think that maybe we really should look into the establishment of what we want or what we think should happen, whether it's through charter or whether it's through ordinances. So I can't get caught up in those little things. But I think it's important at this stage now that we move forward and try to get those clarifications.
If you have if you have this opportunity, and certainly, we can provide some examples of the municipal structures with your type of board. Again, New Haven it's complicated and it has
Well,
issues.
it sounds very much like the way it's like de facto.
Yeah.
Kind of, a little bit like what we're doing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like codified anywhere, but it is.
Yeah, you're right. So with this opportunity to take advantage of this recommendation, to be very clear about what, and to be very in line with the statute, and to just make it clear cut. This is why we are appointed as board members. This is our job. This is what it says in the state statute. This is what, the roles are identified as. And I think that you have the case to make the argument that, let's be in line with what the state statute established library boards to do.
Agreed.
So I'm going to push back a little bit just because I just want to understand. And I know you and I have talked, so I don't want to, but just in the context of this conversation. So the community services, the chief of community services, he works with the executive director on personnel issues, union issues, things that maybe the board is not so.
Exactly. I'm glad you brought that up.
He also works with trying to create synergies, I guess, with other departments, because the library is very much used as a community hub. So that is all like very, I think that's very beneficial to the residents of Norwalk, that there's somebody who's connecting the library with all kinds of services so that we can, help provide space and all kinds of things. So, so there, it seems like there are some benefits, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm so happy you brought that up. So.
Well, I think they're all good points, but I think we need to move on because it's kind of getting.
Well, I think, Moina's absolutely right. And she brought, and I appreciate you for getting me back into that point, being very clear about that. So essentially this chief is acting kind of like as your personnel department, because one of the clear areas that any library board does not have purview over. Library board does not have purview over any other personnel in the library other than the director. So in this case, where there's a very narrowly defined role of this layer that is really focused on the personnel, union issues, and those I would call them interdepartmental relationships. That's very similar to what a personnel department would do. So in that sense, that is a correct role for that person to have. So I think if you're talking about, the ordinance or the charter, being very clear about that, being very clear about your role, hiring the director, evaluating the director, working with the director on policies, and the clarity with the other, that layer, which is very specific to the personnel issues and the union issues and the interdepartmental relationships. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So in that, and I'm glad you brought that in there, because that is very clearly a very defined role of that person. So as long as that person is not coming into the library and deciding, working with the director on a policy, that's out of their purview. Or if that person is not coming into the library and going into an area that's not within, I think that clarity as to the role, because that to me is almost the same as a personnel department, really. That's what that person role is being fulfilled with. And that's working on something very specific that the board does not have purview over.
Yeah, that, I totally agree with that. Yeah, that is a person, yeah.
All right.
Mary,
So-
sorry.
No, my comment was just going to be the thing that I'm hearing consistently is we need to figure out specifically defined goals and present that.
Well,
However,
I'm
whatever
so
takes to
glad
make
you
it
said
happen.
that, because
Okay.
we're right at the roll. We're right
Oh,
here
okay.
rolling. So really, and I have another document as we go through. So effective management without intruding on management's role. So you are the board of directors, and the director is the CEO of operations. So library board members should not be going in to a library during the day and sitting behind the circulation desk and telling the circulation clerk, shouldn't you be doing it that way? No, that's not your role. Your role is to work with the director on the policy issues, the other issues. It also, you act as a group. You should not meet with other board members outside of regularly. I know there's social events. I know there's things going on, but if 3 of you sit together at a coffee shop, yeah, it's not a good thing.
Thank you. I like that.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. I mean, that's really, and trust me, it happens.
Mhm.
So, but another important thing is you as a board work as one. So if you had a meeting, if you had a vote tonight in your meeting where you were voting on something and say it was, 8 votes to 1, and that one person didn't agree with what you voted on, regardless of whether they agree with you or not, they need to toe the line. They need to support that. They cannot go out and say, oh yeah, they voted on this. I totally disagree with this. You act as one, you're one entity. You need to communicate as one. You need to present a one board thought. So in talking about the who does what, your board is big picture, policies, plans of directors like strategy planning. With the director, you advise on, provide input on the budget. You evaluate the director, you advocate for the library. The director is the operations, implements policy, manages day-to-day library operations, and keeps board informed of issues that they need to be aware of. The Friends group is important, even though they're a separate organization, because they're your one of your fundraising arms. They're your other volunteers and your other advocates. So I think Moina shared this document with you. This is
I have
really,
it different times, yeah.
yeah.
But
So,
I'll share it again.
okay, so this is who does what. This is really the nitty gritty of what you should be doing. And I think in going back to that layer of that person layer who's dealing with that personnel issues and the union issues and the interdepartmental relationships, that's kind of comes over to the library director column, because the library director is the one who's dealing directly with library personnel. So it basically like lays out, and this is right, this is standard. So this is a worksheet that the state library, Connecticut State Library, developed along with the Association of Connecticut Library Boards, and it's used by the United for Libraries, which is the American Library Association group for library trustees and board members. And it really narrows down who does what, who's responsible for what. What do you do? What does the director do? And this is very important for you to be very aware of. Advocacy, again, is important, because when the director is going to present that budget to whomever, and you need to support that budget. You need to support the library director in budget meetings, And you should always be prepared to talk about the library, have that elevator speech ready, be able to have good communications with your municipality. I mean, talking about and being aware of the library, being aware of what's happening. You know, again, I understand you're a municipal library, you cannot fundraise, but you can advocate. You can support your friend's organization. You can participate in fundraising and capital campaign by donating. But I think it's really important to maintain good relationships. I understand you have a foundation, your friends groups, to really have a good relationship with them. So I'm going to just touch really quickly on board meetings, ineffective boards, why an ineffective board is ineffective. Unfocused meetings, improperly conducted meetings, meaning not following Robert's rules of order, no clear goals, no agenda, focus on non-governance issues, which is gossiping, not prepared for meetings. So when you get your agenda, you get your minutes from the previous meeting, you get any committee reports, you should actually read them. Overstepping board roles. You shouldn't be going and sitting down with the circulation clerk and telling the clerk how to better check out a book. But you should also participate. Effective boards, the trustees know what's expected of them. Regular attendance, preparation for meetings, participation in meetings, work on committees. Trustees accept that the board acts as a unit. You act as one. If you don't agree with a decision, if you voted against it, but the majority did, you need to accept that and act as that unit. You should have consistently updated bylaws. When was the last, did you have bylaws?
We do, and they're 2015, I think. They're really, yeah.
It's
pretty
time.
old.
It's time.
It's definitely
2007?
time.
I might
No,
even be
boy.
before 2007. Something. It's
So-
great. It's a very long time, and that's on our goals list.
Good, awesome. So,
And we
so
have
when you update your bylaws, it's always good to just take a look at them at least every year.
Yeah, we definitely have to, because we have board members that actually engage with staff members, you know, and I just think that's totally unacceptable
Yeah.
for me. And I've been on this board for a long time, but that is totally unacceptable, because I've had staff come back and say things that board members have said, and I'm like, okay, yeah. We need to work on some updated bylaws and some updated rules and regulations.
And some training and some just reading the handbook and stuff like that. And also we also encourage that you do self-assessments. Like sit back and say, what did we do good this year? What can we do better? You know, what do we need to do to support the director? That kind of thing. Really having a self-assessment of what you're doing.
Yeah, well, it should be what everybody looking out for the library and not for your personal gain or what you.
Absolutely,
goals are. It's
absolutely.
supposed to be.
Absolutely. I'm so glad
know,
you brought that up.
yeah.
You know, a board member should never go on to a board with an agenda.
Yeah.
When I was in White Plains, New York, we used to interview our trustees and have them provide resumes and ask them, the first question we asked them is, do you have a library card? And they're like, yeah. And if they say yes, have you used it? And no. So that's important. So an effective, I'm sorry.
I do have one question.
Sure.
What do you feel about nepotism? We have situations wherein we have board members who are related to staff members, you know, and all kind of crazy. We've got a lot of nepotism issues going on in our library. Is that something that you've heard anything about or has been addressed in any way in your
We
travels?
recently had, so my mentor from when I was at the Palmer School and the gentleman who actually wrote the book on library trustees and in the state of New York, but also that everyone bases their trustee handbooks on, he addressed nepotism as a conflict of interest. And I can actually I'll share his slides with Moina to share with you. And you can take a look at that and what he says on that subject. So an effective board, so when you have a new board member come on board, there should be an orientation. Why am I here? What am I doing? What do I need? You know, minutes from the last year, understanding what's going on. And they should tour the library and meet staff members. Board members should know who your staff members are. They shouldn't like be behind the desk, telling them what to do, but they should be able to, they should know who your staff members are. And they should be aware of their job and what they're doing. Become informed about the structure of the board, understanding you're an advisory board, what you do, and meet with the library director, of course, and board trustee chair to learn about the library. What is the mission? What are the goals? What is your plan? What is needed? And they should always receive a copy of the board bylaws, the town charter and ordinance, and the ACLB handbook. And we also recommend, and Sherelle can also provide this for you, we have a lot of resources and information on our LibGuides, which has all those rules, the laws impacting public libraries in the state of Connecticut. So, and this is just an overview of what I already talked about is what an orientation kit should hold and to be aware of. I can't tell you how many times library boards have just been plopped down at a desk, at a table, and they just start and they're like, what's going on? It's important when you come onto a board, it's like starting a job. You want to understand what your job is. Some boards have job descriptions and understanding of what their role is. And going back to effective meetings, you are a municipal library. You are subject to open meetings. You're subject to Freedom of Information Act. You are subject to, you should always follow Robert's Rules of Orders. When you're having a meeting, the agenda should be set in advance. You stick to agenda items and topics in the meetings. You should prepare before the meeting to have discussion. The library director attends all meetings and I encourage staff members to come in and report on what they're doing. It's important. I know the director includes a lot of this in her report, but sometimes it's really good to hear one of the really wonderful things the library staff is doing. So resources. So we have the ACLB website, and their handbook is there. And there's lots of wonderful resources there. There's library director evaluations. There's board self-assessments. There's a lot of different information on that. Our LibGuides, which are basically our website, but we use a system called LibGuides because we have so much information for you. And so there's information on the rules, the laws and statutes impacting public libraries. ALA organization, United for Libraries, is your national organization for trustees. And Simone Gioio and Robert's Rules are just, again, holding proper meetings. So that's what I have for you. Do you have any other questions? I'm going to stop sharing. And I'll share, I'll share this
I have
slide
a
deck with
question.
you.
Yeah, that I really haven't gone into before, but so we are in the process, the city's in the process of acquiring some and negotiating some properties for a library expansion project. And I understand it's very important for the board to advocate for the library. But when there's negotiation happening, what is your recommendation about how to, because this is like a very hot topic right now for us. We've just acquired a property and are looking, hopefully, I don't know, to get another one. So I'm just curious what your thoughts on that are as a board, how much to get involved and how to advocate without, how to advocate when things are being negotiated.
And that's tricky with negotiations, but I think they should keep you informed. It's incumbent upon the city to keep you informed of what's happening with the negotiations. Like honestly, because it's a contract between I'm assuming it's the city and whoever the entity is that they're negotiating the property with, that's confidential. But they should keep you informed as to the progress, because it's going to be impacted on you. you decide to pursue a, a new library building, you need to be aware of this because, for example, if you decide to pursue a state library grant, one of the key groups on the library building committee is the library board. So you need to be aware of what the status is. You can't get involved in it because it's a negotiation between those two parties, but they should keep you informed of the progress.
Okay.
And I would also think that, you're completely within your right to ask them for updates.
Yep.
I want to share with you also that the State Bond Commission Finance and Revenue just upped our state library grants to $2 million from $1 million.
That's great.
Yeah. So, but that said, when you go through a process with us, the board needs to have complete awareness of property ownership, deeds, titles, anything that all the important documentation and information that you need to pursue an application. I think, an important part of the board is that maintaining open communication with the city.
Mhm.
And vice versa, it should be mutual. And if it's not, it should be pursued.
That's good advice. Well, we have a very committed, dedicated, caring board. We have 9 members on our board. All 9 members are here today, and
That's great.
it gives you a sense of our passion around our libraries. So,
And I think, going back to the discussion about the charter ordinance, I think, having an understanding of that role of that layer and what your role is, clearly your role is. Your role is clearly laid out in statute. And to take the advice of the consultants, the report, and use that knowledge and to really push for having a clear clarification of what your role is, and to have that, charter, ordinance, whatever, it should be in line with the state statute, giving you the authority of an advisory board and what your authorities are.
Geraldo hasn't spoken and he has his hand up.
Hello. I had a simple question related to what you're speaking to earlier with regards to roles and responsibility. So in a situation where the city may be negotiating or looking to acquire property, would the role of the board be sort of, contributing with information or ideas or goals of the board itself, but not in negotiation, but just more making the city aware of the priorities or the desires of the board?
Exactly. Yeah, I that's a good point. And yes, so while not getting involved into the dynamics of the negotiation as not being a party to the negotiation, you still are really the impacted organization because it's impacting you. So there should be, you would hope there's transparency and information that will help you, because you're the entity that is really going to be working with the library director to develop a building plan, to do a needs assessment. So if the understanding of the acquisition of land, I think it's important for you to know that is this viable? Is this acquisition of land, does it work? Does it make sense? If you're thinking about knowing your library. So I think that really encouraging open lines of communications for them to maintain updates for you, because you're essentially the organization that's going to be, you know, developing a building plan.
And in these cases, does that mean on occasion, the director may have to be an assertive or assert themselves if they're being ignored? If the city is proceeding to just operate independently, does that mean the director have to just assert themselves?
And so, yeah, I think, and that's hard.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
it is.
Yeah.
I think it's approaching that, you know, this is our, you know, we're responsible for. It's right in your description in the charter. Buildings and grounds, you know, share with us what you're thinking and allow us to provide input, our thoughts, because again, we're the ones who are going to be shepherding. If you pursue the building, you're going to be shepherding it through the process. I don't know how the relationships or how responsive they are, or if you can reach out to and touch base. Maybe that's something that middle layer does, that you nudge that middle layer person to you know, open a door for you. But it is important. I think there's not a lot of success with, and I oversee the construction, right? I've overseen the construction grant process for 11 years. And I've seen where there has been a lack of communication between the municipality and the library. And by the library, I mean the director, the board, and other interested parties. And there's issues. So I think reaching out, you know, in a very collegial way, you know, we're here to help. What can we do for you? What can we do? Make it mutual. You know, we want to have a successful, you know, building. So what can we do to make this process work? So maybe reaching out that way.
Geraldo, thank you for that question.
Okay. And I meant that in a positive way. I've seen it work that way to where I
Yeah.
see our director asserts herself in initiatives to make sure that our needs are met.
And
Thanks.
and Sherelle, I think you can just, you know, if you just reach out and say, you know, what can we do to help you?
Of course.
What, you know, is there something we can provide some information about? But I think if the door hasn't been open, kind of like trying to get that door open, because you're all going to have to work together.
And I just want to say something. I do think the door has been open. I
Good.
just think the way we approach things, sometimes if we approach it in a negative way, you know, that gets dander up. But I think if people are collegial, the city has been very collegial when they've been approached,
Yeah.
at least from my standpoint. The issue that I have sometimes is with the negotiations. If people are asking me to speak, I just simply say I cannot speak during negotiations. It doesn't mean that I don't know, because sometimes people try, oh, you don't know, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
No, it's not that I don't know, I don't speak during negotiations.
Well, and because they're confidential. I have the same issue when we're negotiating contracts. I get hysterical calls from librarians saying, I need to order this now. Like, are you going to have this offered to us, or are we? And I can't say anything because we're under confidential negotiations. And we can say, just be patient. Or even if you just say, is there anything we can do to help? There may not be, but by showing that positive demeanor, like, I'm not going to harass you. I'm going to ask you, is there anything we can do to help help you along this process?
Makes
I
sense.
think even if you can't do anything, they don't want anything, they don't need anything, just by presenting that positive aspect, like, what can we do to help you? Because down the road, we want you to help us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, observations, concerns? So I will share this slide deck with Moina. I will also share the slide deck from the gentleman, Jerry Nichols, who did a presentation about a month ago, the library directors and boards working together, and he touched on some of those other issues, the nepotism and things like that. And we're also going to bring him back. He's a wonderful, he has 40 years of experience, and he, like I said, he wrote the book. A lot of what the ACLB handbook has, we stole from him. We asked him first though. So I will share that with you and anything else. And I think, going back to bringing up the New Haven structure, I think if you sit, I would suggest that you look at several different similar scenarios and really understand, and now having the understanding that layer really has a specific narrow role. Maybe it's more so focusing on your role and really clarifying and defining that in the charter ordinance, and really making that stronger than that other layer has a very different role from you. That person is not developing policy. That person should not, while they work with Sherelle, I think it should be made clear that your board has supervision over Sherelle. And I can continue to, help you work on that and identify examples. But I think, from what you said, what the study and, pointed out, this is a good opportunity for you to really clarify.
It was pointed out during their presentation that it makes it very difficult for the library director when there's these competing issues. And it was very negative. Like, I don't like to hear things like, it just seems very negative. The oversight of Sherelle, or why not just say the oversight of the director, whoever the director should be.
It's not, you
Well,
shouldn't
no, I
even be
know.
using the word
I'm looking at
oversight.
you and what was stated in the efficiency
Yeah.
study. So it does make it a little convoluted if we do not straighten this out. But I think if everybody just approaches it, as you said, you act as one. Nobody should be acting like on their own and there's no power struggles. I think it would be fine. We're all mature adults, and I think it would be fine. Like, to have the roles and responsibilities defined would be great.
Well, I think as you mentioned that, as a board, and I totally believe in this, we can't go off on these little coffee clutches. We have to work together, and we have to respect each other, and nobody should be going off trying to, on their own, to do stuff. It should be a collective and a respectful collaboration. That's what it's supposed to be. And that way because when you do that, you kind of convolute everything. And so when you go off in these different directions and learn how to respect people.
And that's a great
no
point.
matter whether you like their opinion or not, respect them and work together.
That's an excellent, great point. Because if you approach this, what you need to do in this process as the board, as one, and that's a show of force, and it's it really positions you as yes, this is their job, this is their role, this should be clarified. There should be no question, and it shouldn't be a gray area. I also think that there's a lot of good language out there. If you do a scan of, again, we can help you with this as well, of other charters with their language. What is the language that's in there? And there's some really good language in there that is very clear. You don't want to end up convoluted. I don't think you're at this point, you're somewhat similar to New Haven, but you don't have, theirs has been, it's basically been institutionalized for decades. But this, I think that this added layer has been recent.
Last 4 years.
Yeah. So New Haven's has been decades. And I think this is an opportunity to really take the opportunity to just really solidify and clarify this and just take care of it. And
Well,
again,
thank you so-
going
yes,
back
sir.
to Jan,
Go ahead.
going
Just-
back to Jani's point, I hope I pronounced your name right. That if you act as the entity that you are, it just, presents that, yeah, this board understands their role. They know what they're doing, and we should listen to them. And I'm just so happy that all
so
9 of you are
much,
here.
Dawn. This was great. This was really great. I thought.
I
you
hope
know,
so.
Very, very informative and clarifying as well.
Well, I'm at your service going forward. I'll share those documents with you, and I will say that when I first I took one library through a charter revision. And so we understand the process. The charter revision was actually, they wanted to become a municipal library because they were an association library of a building and they could no longer sustain it. So they went through a charter revision to establish the library as a municipal library as opposed to an association library. So we have experience in taking you through that. And really identifying, good examples out there.
Okay. We'll be in touch.
Excellent. So you all have a wonderful evening. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and Moina or Sherelle, feel free to reach out to me if you have any further questions. I'll send those slide decks along.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All right.
Dawn.
Have a wonderful
Have a
night.
wonderful
Thank
evening.
you.
Bye-bye.
Breathe easy.
Okay, I hope you all found that useful. So I'll get her slides and share that with everyone. Get her slides. And I know that Laurel has signed off. She's not feeling well. And so I just want to let you know. So moving on, we have you saw the email about 3 Belden. And it's a very exciting moment. I know that several members of this current board have been around for a lot of discussion around the acquisition of 3 Belden for many years, and it is coming to pass at a fantastic time. And so I won't go through I'm assuming everybody saw the email. I know the land use went before the acquisition, went before land use yesterday. Sherelle, you were there, right? Do you want to say anything about what was said? I think Jess presented.
She did.
Right.
Everybody seemed to be in support. It passed
She
unanimously.
said everyone, it was
Yeah, passed
unanimous.
unanimously. So that was, a great indication that the city is very supportive and committed to the renovation of the library.
So that was good that it got unanimous approval. I thought that was a great sign. And
And I'll just throw in too that GNLV also passed. The renovation for the GNLV,
right.
Greater Norwalk Literacy Volunteers, also passed.
Yeah, that's great that we were able to get on the agenda and now kind of can move forward with that as well. So that's really great. So it is going to come in front of the council on June 27th for approval by the council. And I'm hoping we can all be in attendance at that meeting, either in person or at least on Zoom. I will plan on speaking during public comment. Sherelle, if you'd like to as well, if anybody else on the board, but at least if we're all if we're all there and show, you know, our real enthusiasm for this purchase to the city and also thank the First Taxing District for their role in this. Is Tom there?
Yes, he is.
Oh, okay. So, okay, was there would anyone else like to say anything about rebuilding before we move on? Okay, so, the governance memo. I'm assuming that everybody had a chance to read it. And I wanted to know if there was any discussion around it. I mean, I think given our discussion today, it seemed very much in line. I mean, I tried not to make it a very long, lengthy memo, but more kind of the start of a conversation. But clearly articulating, you know, what we hope to achieve. And I do know that, well, the council has an ordinance committee. And I do think after the charter revision, the ordinance is next up in terms of getting a thorough going through. So I think that I think our timing is good too. So, did anyone have any comments or thoughts on the memo? Or have any suggestions? It was clear. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I think after the discussion tonight, we ought to hold it and try to do what Dawn suggested, which is to make it quite explicit and clear about what we're seeking. I think it's the memo is a little bit too imprecise and uncertain. It identifies issues without giving any recommendation of how they should be resolved. And I think the lesson I've taken from tonight is that we ought to work with the state statute to recommend some resolution of the key issues. Again, I think part of the problem here is that the group that did the efficiency study never bothered to interview anybody from the board and therefore approached it, you know, from a city side management perspective, rather than from a better understanding of the role of the library in the city, about the state statute and its goal of maintaining independence for the reasons that libraries need to be independent. So I would find it hard to support it tonight because it doesn't have the clarity that I think Dawn was suggesting this was a good opportunity to put forward. And I'd be glad to help work on it going. I tried to do some redrafting of it, but I just felt it was changing it so much that it wasn't really a redrafting, it was an alternative, and I didn't want to present that cold.
So, I mean, I guess I would say that I think, like, in terms of the substance of the memo, the one part I think that she was very clear, very much, probably much stronger than I was around the evaluation, not so much the hiring, but the evaluation of the director. Whereas I think I kind of left it a little bit more like we should have a discussion about this. And, you know, with the fact that we have, you know, this community services person. So, I mean, aside from that, I'm just trying to get a sense from you as to what other areas you think need more elaboration.
Well, for example, the ordinance says that we present our budget to the Board of Estimate. And the way things have worked is that we now present our budget to the Community Services Division, which edits it before it goes to the Board of Estimate.
Okay.
I understand that the budget matter is advisory, that we're not a quote governing unquote board about the budget. But the idea is that we should let the city's finance entity, the Board of Estimate, know what we think the needs of the library are. I think the way it goes now is it goes to the Community Services Division, and the mayor may say to all the divisions, I want you to cut your budgets by 3% before you submit it to the Board of Estimate. Well, that's the kind of management interference with the library's budget that I don't think the ordinance permits, even if we are advisory about what we need. And that's another point that I thought the memo didn't have enough clarity on. And
Okay, that's good. That's fair. Yeah.
that's another point. And I do also want to suggest somewhere in there that the efficiency firm should have interviewed the board. It's a little bit too complimentary to that firm saying, oh, we appreciate their good work or something. No, they should have interviewed us to get a perspective from the library about issues, because now it's sort of skewed the discussion in which we're responding on the defensive to what they took up from a city management point of view rather than from the needs of the library. So that's another point I thought was
Yeah,
Uh,
that point wasn't made, really. Yeah. Are there any other comments?
Just one comment. I mean, I understand about the budget, but I remember that, what was her name? I can't, what was her name again? Dawn. In her presentation, she said that we are an advisory. We're not actually creating a budget and getting approval for it from it being submitted from us. It goes through a process. We're only an advisory and we submit it and then they take it from there. It's like you get do a draft and they're taking it and working it from that draft. But I don't think we're supposed to be, because we're right now an advisory board, that's what we are, then we can't say we're not a governing board. So we cannot have total access over the budget. I don't think.
JD, I agree with you. But what I'm saying is we at least, I think, under the ordinance, have the opportunity to make our opinion about the library's need for budget resources
I agree
directly to the city finance entity, which is the Board of Estimate and the finance department. Now it goes through an intermediate filter. And again, Lamont has cut positions out of our request. Hasn't granted all of our requests, either for operating or capital. And in the end, that's the city's right. I don't dispute that. What I do dispute is that our view isn't being presented to the city finance authority in the way that the ordinance gives us the right to do. And I think that's the kind of non-personnel involvement of this middle management layer that Dawn was saying. And it's hard because she doesn't know all the details of all of our local discussions about the efficiency study and negotiations and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't want to involve her in the specifics of a dispute. But when she was saying that the role of community services is primarily going to be personnel and union matters, I agree with that. So I think that the memo or letter from us or Moyna, however it's done, ought
No,
to be
it's from the
clear.
board. It's just I'm writing.
Okay,
it
ought to
off
be
the
clear
board.
that under the ordinance, we have the right to have our budget presented directly to the Board of Estimate. The fact that the mayor created another layer of management bureaucracy, that's fine. I did it informally when I was mayor. I didn't create it, but I used it. But still, we get to present to the Board of Estimate. And I think that point ought to be made. I'm not disputing that we're advisory, but who do we advise? Well, we advise the Board of Estimate. We don't advise Lamont.
Well, that's why I said it was important that Lamont maybe needed to attend our meetings and then
Okay.
we work with him from that point of view,
Sure.
so we can get
I think
his
that was a good
input
idea.
from that perspective.
Yeah.
So that's what I think.
Yeah, I know some version of my letter, I think did have that, and I don't know how it got. I think like the first version might have had it. I've done a lot of different versions of this letter, but, okay. So I think, so let's come up with,
Geraldo had his hand up.
oh,
You were-
sorry.
You were
Hi.
doing your notes, yeah.
I was just more interested in knowing if Janice thought that, that we had some way that we could make Lamont attend the meetings. Are you suggesting that he should attend all our meetings or been invited to some meetings?
I think you should be invited to some meetings, particularly if we're talking about budget, have him come in to the budget. So therefore, we can explain to me why we need without him, getting the budget and then, crossing it out. This way he'll understand why we have the position, why we're asking for whatever, or for any other thing that is important to the board, have him attend the meeting. That's what I'm saying.
And I have to review. Now I've heard the presentation this evening. I think it gives me more clarity to be able to have an opinion. I think it's still early for me to express that and answer your question more.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. It's I swear every month I feel like, oh, a little differently. So, let's just come up with a timeline so that we can, move this thing along. So, would you like to send, I don't know, can we vote on it? Let's plan to vote on it at the next meeting. Is that what we're planning on?
Well, Monica, can I suggest that since we do have a governance subcommittee,
Yeah,
which didn't review this draft, that we schedule a meeting of that in the next week or two to review your draft and any other draft that may come in. And then that committee can make a recommendation to the board to be
okay,
voted
that's
on
fine.
at
Yeah.
the
So,
July.
I mean, right. So, I have circulated drafts upon drafts and nobody has sent me
Response.
any comments.
Okay.
So, I mean, it has been months. So I'm really hoping that, and I have asked everybody for their input and comments on many different occasions. So, so let's do that. But I think I just wanted to make that point. So, so we'll set up another governance committee meeting.
Okay.
At that time, if there are any written comments or like extra drafts that we can have it, we can have that, compile those and then, come up with another, finalized draft and circulate that to the board and hopefully vote on it by next month. Does that sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. Because then we won't be meeting in August, and then it would be great to kind of move this off our plate. For what I've seen from like this almost 1 year is that like a lot of work happens in the fall, and we need to do a lot of different kind of work in the fall too and move this along. I mean, this will continue, but at least we get this out the door and the ball rolling on, kind of starting to talk to the city about all of this stuff. So
Since Dawn suggested we follow Robert's rules, I move that we refer this matter to the governance subcommittee.
A second.
all in favor? Okay,
Aye.
excellent. Okay. And so let's, next on the agenda is Library Cafe.
Okay. Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I have to apologize that I didn't get as much done as I would like to do, but I'd like to give us summary of how I'm going to proceed. So we have an initial draft and I've updated that draft with some slight modifications to which I'll get out to everyone. And I need to get some clarity with regards to, the RFP process. My general thoughts on the RFP process is once we have the document done, that I'd like to promote the RFP to some local entities, local cafes in the Wall Street and Main Street area to see if we could get those people to bid on the RFP, which I believe if we have a local business, and I'm saying local with close proximity, it would help them in many ways in delivering the services, because if somebody's absent or if they need some support, they would have a main entity close by that they could help them. But some of the things I've seen right now, I'm not, I'm going to need some help with understanding how to proceed with regards to the equipment that was acquired. The way I read the RFP and how certain things were done with, with bringing in the equipment, whether it's the sink, plumbing, etc. Want to make sure whatever I'm proposing is consistent with how the city would normally operate. Even covering things like if there should be a damage to the plumbing, who takes care of that, who pays for that. So there's some aspects I would like to do. In general, I see, a local cafe with the art space in Norwalk on West Avenue as a great model of something. If we could have something even close to that, it would be great. So, but by the next meeting, before the next meeting, within a week, I should have the updated RFP to you, and then gain some understanding, work with more enough to how to proceed with the process.
Yeah, and Sherelle too, definitely.
Yeah.
She knows a lot about how to proceed. Alex?
Yeah, Geraldo, I would urge you to work pretty closely, and I assume Sherelle can be a liaison with the city's purchasing department, because they are the ones who know how to put out the bid. I think it probably is not proper to limit the bid opportunity just to local cafes, although you could make part of the specifications that if there was a breakdown or a staff shortage, that the operator would have to provide substitute staff, something like that. So it may be that only a local vendor would be able to fulfill that requirement. But I think generally it has to be put out to the general public rather than just to a few specific vendors in order to be a proper bid under city regulations. And, I think it's really proper for you, if you want to rely on city staff to do that kind of drafting, if you give them, after we discuss it as a board, the content of what should be in it, as opposed to you having to draft legal language that, would cover all those things.
Yeah, and so just for clarity, wasn't proposing limiting the response to the RFP to the local vendors. What I said is I would encourage them to participate in the bid process.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Then the other part, I understood that from looking at this and having some questions, I think looking at guidance in speaking to Moina and Sherelle earlier, that I need to get involved with the city. What I was mentioning is understanding, and gaining some clarity with who should be responsible for those things. Also, there are issues in the cafe that we took and specified that the vendor needed to be responsible for some of those items. And I want to see if that's a requirement of the city, because that looked different from what I've worked with in the past.
Well, I hope you'll include in the RFP that they have to provide pecan pie, all right?
Okay. And any other questions?
Mary agrees, that's good.
And we'll add hot sauce to it also.
Oh,
Okay.
I just want a good cappuccino. That's all I want. since you're taking orders.
As long as you're not asking for alcoholic beverages, we're okay. Any
Um,
other questions or suggestions?
Maybe Geraldo can bring us a tasting menu. We can all,
Oh, okay, okay, sure.
I do think whoever comes in should understand that you know, it's gonna, that there's a renovation on the horizon. So
Yeah.
I mean, that could possibly, you know, lure people in too, if they wanted to be part of it.
Yeah.
So okay, any more comments on that or suggestions? Okay, the furniture committee has not met. We'll table that for another time. Till the next meeting. And the so that there's an action item for the electric car charging station at Sono Library. I think we had a pretty robust conversation last time about it. And I guess would someone like to move that, and we can, you know, continue our conversation a little bit. So make a motion. You're on mute, Alex.
you know, we had a good discussion. What's the recommendation? Was it one on the library property and one on the sidewalk? I forget what the conclusion.
Because they couldn't put that putting one on the street was not an option. So they recommended we could have one charging station, or we could have one station that fuels 2 cars. And I think from my recollection that we were thinking of 1 space.
Okay,
With
Well,
2 possible with 2 chargers or 1?
Well, I gathered from the concern about the parking that we were thinking of the 1. But that's, you know, I'm okay either way.
I favor 2 as long as we're gonna do it. I'm not sure they're gonna be used a whole lot if they're put in the back where it won't be visible from the street even. So I would move approval of the dual charging station.
I will say that the word gets around that it will be there. I mean,
But one of them will have your name on it, Monica, because of your.
people who have electric cars, they know where all of the chargers are. Let me
Good.
tell
Well, let's hope there'll be more of them.
you. Yeah, I agree with that.
I have a.
Go
Is this
ahead.
a revenue producer?
No.
So
It's a freebie?
Well,
It's
it's a freebie for us. It's a revenue producer for the vendor.
Right.
So my position is this, you know, I've had a hard time with giving up space from the parking space, which, you know, in my experience is very limited. And I think even here in the last meeting, Sherelle would mention that on occasion, yes, there's not enough parking with what exists today. So I think it's interesting. I was disappointed with the response, which I had to process. That the guy didn't say it could do, and I even went back and read the minutes. He didn't say it couldn't be done, the parking in the front. He said it was essentially not recommended because the city is going to make some changes up front. So guess what? Even my street right now, I've had like 2 weeks where they're repairing the streets and sometimes blocking my driveway. But, you know, that's part of life. So I don't see how we could give up, you know, when we were looking for the main library and looking for extra space, which we clearly need. I don't see how there's existing shortage in South Norwalk in the Sono Library that we would look at taking away space from people. And the fact is there are 2 spaces right there, even though they say it's not metered. It is metered. It's not nickel individual meters. There's a meter station up front.
Right.
But so there's parking there, and the parking having the the charging stations in front of the library would be much more effective. It would be more beneficial to the city because people would see it. People going to the post office, people going to the restaurants, to the train station, they would all see it. It's much more than if somebody just had to look up in search for her place. As a matter of fact, I would believe if it's after hours, the library is not open, people wouldn't want to go there. It's kind of isolated and not back there. While if they were up front, they were more likely to do it. So I would push back and say, yeah, I would. And by the way, I wholeheartedly support having the charging station. And I can't see why it wouldn't be done in the front of the library as opposed to in the back, because I think people that are, the clients of ours in the Sono library are being impacted with, if we are going to use space in the back, whether it's one or two, I think it's an impact to the users of the library.
I think one of the reasons, I don't know if he said this, but one of the reasons why the front charger would be a little maybe problematic is it takes good 3 hours to at least charge your car. So a lot of the space out front is, much kind of goes in and out a little bit more quickly. But anyway.
By the way, my experience, that space is never used. The space
Okay.
up front, it's hardly ever used. The space in the back is used, it's free, but the space in the front with charging is, you don't have high usage there. So it's not like it's revenue that the city is losing.
The space actually in the front of the library is used. It's often used for the post office. So they're
Yes.
in and out. It's used for the post office.
Yeah.
Sometimes if we're having a program and we have overflows, some people will park there at the meters, but those spaces are used.
Me?
It's paying. I'm saying it's not a free thing. And most
No,
of the
it's
people
not
go to
free.
the post office, park close to the post office where it's free.
Mhm.
Because if you're right by the post office, it's free.
You don't have to pay, but I to your point, yeah, that's true, but those two spaces in front are often used.
Okay.
So, yes, I feel like, all we talk about is how we don't have enough parking.
Yeah.
And whether, it's at the main and here at Sono, we're looking for more parking from SNU. Once the library gets renovated, there's going to be so much interest in the library. It really is tight back there. Over the years, there have been many times when I have to go searching for parking. So that's just the way I think about it.
I am a proponent of having definitely at least one charging station back there. Besides the fact that I'm a SNU commissioner and the building is ours, but I still feel strongly that as a community service, and I don't know where the other stations are going to be located in South Norwalk, and there is one other one, I believe. I think as a community service, I would definitely like to see one station at the library in hopes that we can come up with some way or other to monitor it. I just want to jump back to something else, the letter that was received, I think from Brian or whoever in regards to the parking situation. That's an issue that I think we should give them a lot of pushback on. And I think that if we as a library board give the parking authority a lot of pushback on that, we will get those additional spaces.
Well, could
I'm
somebody,
gonna put that on the agenda for next time.
could somebody circulate the reply letter?
Yeah, I will.
I've never seen.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary.
So
Well,
I have that.
I
on the-
actually put together the whole string in Word. Do you want me to send that to you?
Sure, I'd like to see what they said.
Yeah, it was just yesterday, so we can forward that
Okay.
to you.
I mean, I understand about the parking situation, but as we all stay inside because of the smoky haze outside or deal with Superstorm Sandy or other problems. Look, climate change is a big problem, and the country and the state are moving to increase the percentage of electric vehicles. I know, I mean, in Europe, my God, I think within 4 or 5 years, they're not gonna sell any gas combustion cars. So, you know, the fact that we're gonna have 2 spaces for electric charging doesn't mean that we're losing the parking. We're just providing parking for electric cars as well. And, you know, if we don't take into account climate change with this little kind of thing, I'm kind of concerned about not being able to do some of the big things.
By the way, Alex, I was proposing putting I continue to propose taking those 2 spots and putting them in front, not having electrical charging spaces. I'm just saying not taking using the space or taking the space on the 8 parking space in the back.
Or
Yeah, but
maybe
I understand that
compromise-
the problem is that with the city parking charging with time limits
Yeah.
with that pay station, it's hard to coordinate that with the time it takes different models of electric cars to charge. I know Moyna has spoken about the time
Yeah.
it takes for the charge, and I don't know how that gets coordinated in the near term, Geraldo.
Couldn't they release it? Not include it as a metered parking. I'm saying just make them
Great.
that is still revenue. It's revenue that the city would still get.
I would love to see both libraries have the charging stations. And I don't know if there's a way, maybe we just have people charge their cars overnight. I don't know if we could do that. And maybe the compromise might be instead of having the 2, we have 1.
So, Mary, what was the reason that's given for not having using the space up front?
Some sort of plans or something that the city has in regards to what they need to do out there. I'm not sure of the specifics of it.
I do know, I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but we've been after them about those ugly light poles. They have the really nice ones down in the restaurant area of Washington Street, but not on our end. They're horrendous. But they were saying the reason they couldn't dig or couldn't do anything at present is because I guess that's where the old trolley wires are underneath. So I do know that could possibly be part of it.
I'll definitely find out for sure, though.
I've said all the things I know of as an electric vehicle user, but I'm open. I mean, if Sherelle like thinks that one would be a good idea, you know, Mary, who's part of SNU,
Yes.
like I am persuadable, and you know,
Moyna, do you charge your car during the day or do you charge it during evening hours?
so I charge it at night.
Because maybe that could be, you know, something, you know, that we have people charge at night.
But I have a charger at home. When my charger at home sometimes doesn't work, or there was a long period where it didn't work, we would go and drop it off at the East Norwalk train station. And I often had trouble. Not the East Norwalk train station, the East Norwalk library. They would often be full. And there are like 8 chargers over there. And I would go there at all times of day, and they were often full, because people who have electric cars know where the chargers are. So I'm just, you know, but if it's you know,
But maybe we
if it's
try
one or
one.
1 or 2, then I just want to make sure.
Well, you know, I think you can do 2, because Cheryl, right there, when you enter the parking lot, you have those 2 spaces right there. And most people always go the other way, they park. But if you have those 2 you can put those 2 charging stations right there together, right there. And that, I don't think that would be too.
But the other thing is, we have charging stations at work, and they're almost always parked by cars, like whoever gets there first, because we have a part is going to get it. And you know, so then like somebody who needs a charger isn't really going to have access to the charger, because it's like first come, first serve. Nobody's going to say this car spot is only for chargeable cars, which might be fine. And it kind of works out. I mean, you know, it's not a perfect solution. It's just that on the days.
Well,
that-
I know they have it at Stop and Shop and nobody parks in those spaces.
Nobody uses them.
No, they
Nobody
are
uses them.
empty,
They're
you know.
always empty.
Yeah.
I'm
So I
still
don't think
gonna
they're gonna
say, as a
park there.
community
And,
service,
and it might be
I'm
because they
going in-
have the
I
actual
want it at the library.
thing there.
And-
The
and I'm-
Nice one.
And I'm in support of it at the library. My question to Sherelle, how often do we have no space available? Or all, you have 8 spaces now? 6
No, there's 20 spaces,
20.
in the South Norwalk Library?
correct?
Okay.
2 of which are handicap.
And
So the other thing I'm thinking too is when we have performers, we usually put a cone to reserve a space for them, particularly because they have to unload, so they don't have to, cross the street. So that could be one of the places, that we put the cone. I recognize what you're saying, about losing the space. Truly, I do. But I do think it would be a great community service.
Yeah.
And maybe if we can encourage people to charge overnight when, the place is not being used, I think that would be great.
Plus, this is going to be the future because now those electric cars are coming out like they're coming like
No.
fast now. I
And
mean,
I-
Yeah,
every time
and
turn on
plus you have
TV,
to
it's a new
pay,
car.
like in East Norwalk, you don't have to pay. It's
Mhm.
free. So like this one, you have to pay, so maybe there won't be.
You're gonna have to start paying for all of them.
know.
And there is going to be another site and they're looking at another site in South Norwalk. But once again, for me,
Okay,
community service, I think we should have it.
fair enough. All right.
I'm just gonna be there.
And Sherelle, how often do you not have any space available today? Do you ever run out?
Any programming,
During programming,
anytime there's a program at Sono, there's no parking in the back. People like me, I either park on the street and pay.
Yeah.
Or I go over to the lot, so. But there's
Okay.
never, to answer your question, there's always a problem with parking when we have
That-
programs.
I've
And
had
my
lots
issue,
of problem
My
parking.
concern. There are 2 people that will be impacted each time.
so maybe we do one.
I think you should just do 2 if you're gonna do it.
Again, my only issue is I don't understand why we're worrying about the front, not putting them in front. Which just seems like it's a decision that somebody's making that, that eventually are going to do some. What I heard in the meeting last week is eventually they're going to be doing some work up front, and that's going to have an impact on this while they're doing the service up front.
So
Yes.
should we move to, would somebody like to make
Yeah.
a motion?
I made a motion.
Oh, you did?
Motion
Okay,
for Putting 2 charging stations in the Sono
Okay.
parking lot.
Would someone like to second?
Mary seconded.
Okay, Mary seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone abstain or oppose?
I oppose based on what I said before.
Geraldo.
I vote no.
And Tom votes no. Okay. So
How's
that's,
how's your Model T doing there, Tom?
What? Why shouldn't I be able to gas up my car at the library?
We don't have a gas pump.
That's right. Now you're catching on.
And as I said, I support having a charging station wholeheartedly, just not taking away the parking space.
All right.
Different issues.
Tom, do you want Esso or Texaco?
Pardon?
You gonna propose Esso or Texaco?
A Russian.
As a contractor, they're already available on the open market.
okay. Moving on. I'm done with my section.
Oh, wow.
It's getting late. Not
Yes,
gonna say-
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
All right, Sherelle.
Okay,
You.
so we've already had our update from Silver Petroselli. Moy and I, actually during the last meeting, we had discussed looking at, consultants. And I called and I had the help of staff as well.
But should this part be in the foundation?
You want to put it in the foundation?
Because it's strategic planning, right?
It's basically just the names of the organizations that I looked at.
I think it's technically, we should be putting it in the foundation section because the foundation will be supporting the strategic planning process. If we're going the same model as the last
So
time.
so we can do that. It's both the consultants and it's also the contractors who actually did the work. So I'm
It's also
okay
the what?
with the contractors who did the work
The contractors who did the work for what?
for the renovations of some of the Fairfield County libraries.
Oh, okay, that part, I think it's,
Either way, we can do it in the foundation if that's your preference.
okay, let's do it there. So shall we? I make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, we'll see you over in the foundation section. Thanks. Betty.